And Donald Trump's tariff strategy is slowly choking China's factory floor. Overtime is drying up, pay is shrinking, and workers are being pushed into temporary jobs. Meanwhile, exporters are turning away from the United States.
Big changes are shaking the world's factory floor, and it's happening in China. For years, global giants like Apple and Amazon have relied on Chinese factories to keep their supply chains moving and their profits soaring. But now, those same companies are beginning to step back, pulling out production and looking for alternatives. This shift isn't happening for no reason. Behind it are deep issues with rising costs, political tensions, supply chain risks, and a slowdown in China's once unstoppable manufacturing power. The question is, could this be the start of a collapse in the very industry that built China's economic rise? Today, we're going to dig into the reasons behind this massive shift, explore what it means for China, and uncover how it could change the global economy. Stay with us till the end, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the story you're about to hear will affect far more than just China's factories. For decades, China has been known as the workshop of the world, a place where global corporations could produce their goods at scale, at speed, and at costs lower than almost anywhere else. The rise of China's manufacturing industry fueled its economic miracle, lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and making it the second largest economy on Earth. But now, something very different is happening, something that would have seemed almost impossible a decade ago. Some of the world's biggest companies, including Apple and Amazon, are moving production out of China, and their decisions are sending shockwaves through the global economy. The story is not just about corporate strategy. It is about the cracks forming in an economic system that once looked unshakable. There are many reasons behind this shift, and the first one is rising costs. As China developed, wages naturally increased. For years, the country's advantage was cheap labor, combined with massive infrastructure investment. But now, manufacturing in China is no longer as cheap as it used to be. Workers demand higher pay, labor regulations are tighter, and factories face higher operational costs. For companies whose business models depend on low-cost, mass production, this has forced them to look for alternatives in countries like Vietnam, India, and Mexico, where wages remain lower and regulations are less strict. Another major factor is geopolitics. The relationship between the United States and China has become increasingly tense, marked by trade wars, tariffs, and strategic rivalries. The U.S. government has been pressuring American companies to reduce their dependence on China, particularly for sensitive technology and critical supply chains. Concerns about national security and the risks of over-reliance on a geopolitical rival have led companies to rethink their long-term strategies. For Apple, which assembles most of its iPhones in China, or Amazon, which sources many products from Chinese factories, this pressure has become too significant to ignore. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed another weakness: supply chain vulnerability. When factories in China shut down, the effects rippled across the globe. Entire industries ground to a halt because so many supply chains were concentrated in one country. This was a wake-up call. Companies realized that putting all of their manufacturing eggs in one basket was a dangerous gamble. Diversifying production, even if it costs more in the short term, is now seen as a way to avoid catastrophic disruptions in the future. China itself is also facing structural challenges. The population is aging, and the once endless supply of young workers willing to fill factory floors is shrinking. At the same time, the government has been shifting focus toward high-tech industries, trying to move away from being just a low-cost factory to becoming a leader in areas like artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and green technology. While this is a long-term strategy for China's development, it has left traditional manufacturing in a more fragile state. Environmental regulations are another piece of the puzzle. For years, China's rapid industrial growth came at a heavy environmental cost: polluted air, toxic rivers, and unsafe working conditions. But in recent years, stricter regulations have been introduced to curb this damage. While this is good for public health and sustainability, it has increased costs for manufacturers, making China less attractive compared to nations with looser standards. The result of all these factors combined is a manufacturing slowdown. Factories are closing, jobs are disappearing, and some regions that once thrived on industrial growth are now struggling to find their footing. For China, this poses a significant challenge because manufacturing has always been a central pillar of its economic model. If that pillar weakens, the ripple effects could be enormous, not just domestically, but globally. For global companies, the decision to leave China is not without risk either. China still offers something that few countries can match: scale. Its infrastructure, logistics networks, and highly skilled labor force are unmatched in many respects. Moving production to other countries is not as simple as flipping a switch. Setting up new factories, training workers, and building supply chains takes years. So even though Apple and Amazon are moving some production out, they remain tied to China in many ways. Looking to the future, the question is whether this trend will continue and accelerate, or whether China can adapt to stop the outflow. If more companies follow the same path, China could face a significant economic slowdown, weakening its global influence and destabilizing its domestic economy. On the other hand, China may respond by doubling down on automation, advanced technologies, and domestic demand to reduce its reliance on foreign corporations. This moment represents a turning point in the global economic order. For decades, the story was about globalization and the rise of China as the manufacturing hub of the world. Now the story may be shifting toward diversification, regional supply chains, and a more fragmented global economy. For workers in China, this could mean fewer opportunities and economic uncertainty. What we're seeing now is more than just companies shifting their supply chains. It's a signal that the balance of global power is changing. China built its rise on manufacturing dominance. But if Apple, Amazon, and others continue to pull away, that foundation begins to crack. The question is not only what this means for China's future, but also what it means for the rest of the world. Will new nations rise to take China's place? Or will the entire global system become weaker and more fragile without one clear hub? The answers will shape the next chapter of the global economy, and the consequences will be felt in every home, every market, and every job. If you want to keep exploring these hidden shifts and understand where the world is heading, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because the story is far from over.